Get full episodes of The Damage Report as a podcast on iTunes and Android, and you can watch the live show every weekday on YouTube TV. So we are caught in the middle between last week's absolutely horrendous news, political violence, all of that, and the upcoming midterms in just a few days. And joining us now on the show to help break it down, Kyle Kulinski. Kyle, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, John. I appreciate it.
Excited to have you on. So you are the host of the Kyle Kulinski Show. Is perfectly suited for you, the Kyle Kulinski Show.
I'd say so.
We're very glad to have you here, and there's a lot I want to talk to you about. Hopefully, we'll be able to fit it all in. First, though, I saw that Istanbul had released an update on the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. He apparently was strangled almost immediately. Now we're finding out after entering the Saudi consulate, and dismembered shortly thereafter, although they haven't still found the body. What are your thoughts about this developing story and the lack of any real US response to what happened?
I think it's sad and predictable, but I also think that there should be a robust and clear response from the Democrats and from, honestly, the rest of the developed world, because it's simply unacceptable. If we allow Saudi Arabia to get away with this, there's nothing that they can't get away with. I mean, they just killed a journalist. And what I would do if I was in charge is, first of all, immediately cut off the $100 billion weapons deal with them. I would put economic pressure on them to clean up their human rights record. And we don't see that happening because, well, one of the reasons I would say is Donald Trump took about $300,000 from top Saudi officials so that they could stay at his hotel. And this is why there's one of the reasons why there's an emoluments case against him that's proceeding in court, because you can't have a president that's basically bought by foreign governments because they're going to bias policy in favor of that government.
I agree. I noticed last week Bernie Sanders had an editorial where he was calling for us to pull out of any involvement in the war in Yemen with Saudi Arabia as a result of this. And the day after, actually, Rand Paul had a very strong statement about that. In this sort of case, because I guess maybe it would be good to have some bipartisanship, would you want to work with someone like Rand Paul, who obviously we disagree with on a number of other issues?
Oh, absolutely. I think that whenever we have to be policy substance focused. And when you do that, what you'll find is there's a number of areas where it makes sense to work with the more libertarian leaning right wing, because I mean, when you really get down to the specifics of it, people like us, we're libertarian left. We're very, libertarian on social issues. But when it comes to economic issues, we have massive disagreements. And what I say is, don't give an inch on the economic stuff and fight them tooth and nail and argue until you're blue in the face on the economic stuff. But when it comes to issues like war, when it comes to issues like the drug war, on that front, not only should we work with them, I actively encourage it. And I think that that's one of the best ways to actually get stuff done.
So I've noticed over the past few days that story about the killing of Jamal Khashoggi has largely left from the media. We've been continuing to cover it here on the Damage Report, but in part because of there's the political violence, the mail bombs and stuff like that. That's going to get a lot of coverage. But then you also have this sort of led from the politicians' side attempts to get people to focus on other things, like the caravan, for instance. Like you crowd out a lot of other news when you talk so much about that. Is there anything about the caravan that you think people should care about that the media should actually be covering, or is it just elections-based fear-mongering?
It's election-based fear-mongering. So the caravan is right out of Karl Rove's playbook in 2004. He made a big issue about specific anti-gay policies to rile up the Republican base to get them to the polls. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. They're doing basically fear-mongering over immigrants and refugees, people seeking asylum. And it honestly is the oldest trick in the elite's playbook. It's divide and conquer. It's an attempt to get middle-class white people to blame poor Black and brown people for their problems, when of course the reality is the problem is it's corporations, it's the billionaires, it's the rigging of the rules against working class people. And as soon as people wake up and realize that poor white people, middle class white people have a lot more in common with poor and middle class Black and brown people, then there will be a real class awakening, and we'll be able to fight this class war which has been waged against us, the middle class and the poor, for decades now.
Kyle, it's JR of the Not the J.R. Jackson show. I'm working on it. So when it comes, you just talked about policy-based issues, and if you're as liberals working sometimes with libertarians. But when it comes to something like with the caravan, when a lot of times there's nothing based in policy. So the people that you're arguing against for even elections, because this is obviously brought up as an election issue, you bring up policies, and then they're bringing up these emotional-based fear tactics. How do you have that fight? Because it's an age-old question. I'm curious what you think. If you're giving policy and people get bored with it, but they're incited by emotion and anger and discriminatory policies, how do you win that fight? Eventually, you have to address the craziness that they're coming at you with.
I'm optimistic on issues like this, because I feel like every time I make that point that this is straight out of the playbook of the elites and they're playing you, I feel like you could actually convert many people with that. I mean, everybody on the left already goes, oh, of course that's what it is. We know that's what it is. We've been talking about that for a while. Right. But then even people who, might be moderates or independents, and even some of the remaining reasonable people on the right, they go, you know what, that is kind of weird how we have all these incredibly serious issues, like 29 million people without health insurance and wages falling. And under Trump, he said, oh, I'm not going to outsource, but there's been 93,000 jobs outsourced under his administration. It is weird that instead of talking about the real substance, what we're doing is talking about a caravan full of like 20 people as if that's a giant problem. So I think that this all gets back to the point of we fight where we disagree and we don't give an inch. And this is one of those issues where we're supposed to fight. We're supposed to stand up. We're supposed to call this out for what it is, which is fear-mongering and exploiting xenophobia and bigotry in order to try to get elected in the most cynical of ways. So as soon as we really start leading the argument and getting that through everybody's head that this is straight out of the playbook of the elites and they're trying to divide and conquer, I think we win that argument. It might take time, but I think we win that argument.
I hope so. Thank you very much for watching this clip from The Damage Report. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and ring the bell on YouTube to get notifications of our new videos. And of course, you can catch the full Damage Report live every weekday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific on TYT Network on YouTube TV.